Hello everyone, this is Mike and welcome to my final lesson plan. This is an ambitious and engaging 60-minute task-based lesson that emphasizes speaking and listening skills while also incorporating reading and writing skills. In today's lesson, the students will tackle a task that almost everyone faces at some point in their lives in the United States, finding an apartment. This lesson is intended for an in-person class of adult learners, as only adults are eligible to enter into legal contracts like apartment leases. The class consists of 8 adult students ages 18 to 32 from diverse backgrounds, including Mexico, Poland, and Vietnam. They have been living in the United States for about 2 years and take a 60-minute English class 3 times a week at a literacy center in Milwaukee, where the focus is on practical, real-life skills. As an overview for this lesson, the class meets in a cozy, office-sized room where the teacher and students sit around a conference table. The students, who have a high intermediate proficiency level, focus on a different real-world task in each session, with grammar and vocabulary discussed in relation to the topic. In this lesson on finding an apartment, students will be given redacted versions of real apartment listings, a list of common abbreviations related to apartment terms, and an activity worksheet. They will practice making mock phone calls to prospective landlords and ask for details about their apartment listings in a role-playing activity. The classroom is equipped with a whiteboard, markers, and a divider for the role play, and the students will use cell phones as props. At the end of the class, they will complete an exit slip to reflect on their experience. The main goal of this task-based lesson is to help students become comfortable with the idea of calling a landlord or leasing agent about a rental unit. Since initial contacts with prospective landlords often take place over the phone, the students will simulate a landlord-tenant phone call in which they will discuss an apartment for rent. Through mock phone calls, the students will practice their speaking and listening skills, pronunciation, word choice, and telephone etiquette. By the end of this lesson, the students will be able to identify abbreviations commonly used in apartment rental listings, describe the details of an apartment rental listing, and construct questions to ask a landlord or leasing agent. The rationale for this lesson is multifaceted. It helps students familiarize themselves with the process of calling a landlord about an apartment, generally builds their confidence in making phone calls in English, and improves their telephone etiquette. Given that most people in the United States live in an apartment at some point, particularly younger adults, and that finding an apartment can be daunting even for native speakers, this lesson aims to equip students with the vocabulary and skills needed to navigate initial phone conversations with landlords, ensuring they feel more confident when it comes to signing a lease. The warm-up and introduction will take about 5 minutes or so. To start the class, the teacher will introduce the topic by asking students if they or anyone they know has ever looked for an apartment, either in the United States or in their home country. This will be an open discussion where students can share their experiences looking for apartments, such as what they found easy or difficult. For the introduction, the teacher will then explain that the students will be practicing making mock phone calls to inquire about apartments using real rental listings. The teacher will emphasize the real-world relevance of the lesson, highlighting that the skill they are practicing, looking for an apartment, is directly applicable to everyday life in the United States. In the 15-minute presentation phase, the teacher will guide the students in brainstorming vocabulary and questions that could come up when speaking with a landlord about an apartment. The teacher will write the students' responses on the whiteboard for reference during the activity. Key vocabulary includes terms like landlord, tenant, lease, rent, bedroom, and utilities, while relevant questions include inquiries about the lease duration, rent amount, availability, and amenities. The teacher will also introduce common abbreviations used in apartment listings, such as AC for air conditioning, KIT for kitchen, and W/D for washer dryer. This vocabulary and these questions will provide the students with the necessary language for the upcoming role-play activity, with many of the abbreviations appearing in authentic rental listings provided from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel and jsonline.com. For the 25 to 30-minute practice phase, the teacher divides the students into pairs and gives each pair 2 apartment listings. The teacher explains that each pair will participate in a role-playing activity where one student will act as the landlord and the other as a prospective tenant. The teacher will provide a model demonstration of the role-playing activity with a student or ideally with a real landlord, demonstrating a sample dialogue where one person plays the landlord and the other plays the prospective tenant inquiring about an apartment. After the demonstration, the students will then have about 10 minutes to read through their listings, identify key details, and write down 5 questions that they would ask the landlord if they were calling about the apartment. The teacher informs the students that they can take notes during their preparation, but that they should only refer to their apartment listings during the role play to encourage more authentic conversation instead of reading directly from a script. While the students are working in their pairs, there is soft, relaxing ambient music playing in the background. The teacher will circulate around the room, offering supportive comments like, "This is so easy, right?" or "You guys really got this," to help reduce anxiety. Once the pairs are ready, they will take turns role-playing in front of the class. One student will play the landlord and the other will be the caller. A divider will be placed between them to simulate a phone conversation, and they will use cell phones as props, encouraging them to focus on listening rather than visual cues. After a while, the teacher will announce "switch," and the students will reverse roles to practice the dialogue with their second listing. Each role play should last about 2 to 3 minutes. The teacher will informally assess the students' performance by monitoring their dialogues, stepping in only when necessary to keep the conversation flowing. The teacher will focus on evaluating pronunciation, sentence structure, word choice, and telephone etiquette, taking notes to review with each pair after their presentations. To gather feedback, the teacher will ask the class questions such as, "Was the dialogue clear and easy to understand? What key vocabulary or questions did you hear? Are there other questions you would ask about these listings?" The teacher will also check if there were any terms or phrases that students did not understand. If time allows, the teacher will review any new vocabulary or related grammar points. If not, the teacher will note these areas for future lessons. There will be a more formal assessment during the application phase, as discussed in the next slide. For the application phase of the lesson, students will collaborate with their partners to find a real apartment listing using the internet or a local printed rental guide. Using the provided activity worksheet, each pair will note keywords from their listing and create 5 questions to ask the landlord. This task can be completed in class or as homework. When the class reconvenes, each pair will be asked to prepare and present a landlord-tenant dialogue based on their listing. The teacher will collect the activity worksheets and provide constructive feedback on the apartment listings, the descriptors identified, the structure and word choice of their landlord questions, and the fluency and accuracy of their role plays. At the end of the lesson, the teacher will thank the students for their participation and praise them for their role plays. Before leaving, the teacher will ask each student to complete an exit slip with 2 questions. 1. What was the most helpful part of today's lesson? And 2. What would you like to practice in the future? The teacher will use their responses to adjust future lessons and develop additional task-based activities that align with their needs. This lesson plan integrates several language teaching methodologies with a primary focus on task-based learning, communicative language teaching, and content-based instruction. At its core, TVL drives the lesson as students engage in real-world tasks like finding an apartment and conducting a phone conversation with a landlord. This approach encourages language use and context, promoting speaking, listening, and problem-solving in realistic scenarios. By completing a meaningful task, students practice English authentically, which is the essence of TVL. CLT is also central to the lesson, emphasizing communication as the primary goal. Through role-playing activities, students practice real-life interactions, developing fluency and interactional skills. The use of authentic materials such as real apartment listings and student dialogues aligns with CLT's focus on communicative competence rather than grammatical perfection. Finally, the lesson applies CBI by focusing on relevant content, specifically the practical task of finding an apartment. This content-based approach helps students learn language through engaging with practical information, making the learning experience more meaningful and relevant, especially for adult learners. There are also elements of Desuggestipedia through the use of music and the teacher's words of encouragement to reduce anxiety. This lesson plan incorporates a variety of cognitive, metacognitive, and socioaffective learning strategies, with a particular focus on brainstorming, group work, and role play, which enhance student engagement and language acquisition. Cognitively, students actively engage in brainstorming vocabulary and questions related to the apartment listings, which helps them activate prior knowledge and build connections to new information. This cognitive strategy promotes critical thinking as students generate relevant language for the task. In group work, students collaborate with their peers to identify key details in their apartment listings and formulate appropriate questions to ask the landlord. This peer interaction not only encourages cooperative learning, but also allows students to practice language in a social context, supporting both speaking and listening skills. The role-play activity, where students simulate phone conversations with landlords, further enhances cognitive engagement by requiring them to apply the language they've learned in a realistic context. This hands-on practice encourages students to process and produce language actively, fostering problem-solving and decision-making skills as they navigate the role-play. Metacognitive strategies are also emphasized, particularly during the exit slip activity, where students reflect on their learning process and identify which parts of the lesson were most helpful or areas they would like to improve. This self-reflection encourages students to monitor and regulate their own learning. Additionally, the socio-affective strategies in the lesson plan help create a supportive and low-anxiety classroom environment. Words of encouragement from the teachers, such as, "You guys really got this," along with the use of relaxing, ambient music, help to reduce anxiety, promoting a positive emotional climate for learning. The role-playing activities, where students alternate between playing the landlord and prospective tenant, further contribute to the socio-affective dimension by fostering peer interaction, building confidence, and encouraging students to take risks in their language use. Overall, the combination of brainstorming, group work, and role-play, along with added cognitive, metacognitive, and socio-affective strategies, creates a dynamic and interactive learning experience that promotes language development while addressing students' emotional and social needs. This lesson plan incorporates several of Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences. First, linguistic intelligence is most prominently featured in the lesson through the speaking and listening components. Students practice asking and answering questions about apartment listings during a role-playing activity while also brainstorming related vocabulary and formulating task-based questions. This process allows them to hone their linguistic skills in a real-world context, fostering effective communication in English. Interpersonal intelligence is addressed through group work and role-play. Students work in pairs to read through apartment listings, identify key details, and write relevant questions to ask a landlord. The role-playing activity that follows allows them to simulate real-life conversations, practicing social interaction in a supportive environment. This encourages collaboration and helps develop effective communication skills in a social context. Intrapersonal intelligence comes into play during the reflection phase of the lesson. At the end of the class, students complete an exit slip to reflect on their learning, identifying what they found most helpful and areas where they would like further practice. This metacognitive reflection encourages students to monitor and assess their own learning process, enhancing their ability to understand their strengths and areas for improvement. Logical mathematical intelligence is engaged as students analyze apartment listings, breaking down key details such as rent, apartment size, and included amenities. The process of identifying abbreviations in the listings also requires logical reasoning, as students decode and make sense of the information presented in a structured format. Spatial intelligence is incorporated during the role-play phase of the lesson. To simulate a phone conversation, students are seated with a divider between them, focusing on auditory communication rather than relying on visual cues. This spatial arrangement emphasizes listening and speaking, enhancing their ability to navigate real-world scenarios without the need for visual support. Musical intelligence is used as a socio-affective strategy in the lesson. During the role-play preparation phase, relaxing ambient music is played in the background to reduce anxiety and create a comfortable learning environment. This approach helps students feel more at ease, promoting a calm atmosphere that supports effective learning. Finally, bodily kinesthetic intelligence is engaged through the role-playing activity. As students take on the roles of landlords and tenants, they physically act out their conversations, using the divider and cell phones as props to simulate phone calls. This kinesthetic element helps students immerse themselves in the activity, making the learning process more dynamic and engaging and ultimately more meaningful. By appealing to these diverse intelligences, the lesson plan ensures that students engage with material in ways that align with their individual strengths, fostering a holistic and inclusive learning experience. Thank you for watching.